Hey, indie filmmakers, I'm Nick Bodmer.
I'm Griffin Hammond, and on this week's episode, we're talking about the science of storytelling and using Dan Harmon's writing model to craft a compelling narrative for your film.
Plus, your questions about managing big edits, color temperature, and how to tell if your camera is good enough.
Hey, Nick.
Mr. Hammond, how are you?
Pretty good. Although I got a comment that for some reason made me kind of angry. I don't know why.
Oh, good. We're starting out with anger. Always a good way to start the podcast.
On YouTube, I mean, it didn't make me angry, but we got a YouTube comment from Tim Miller, and I'll just read this to you, and we'll talk about my response to it. I guess this was on one of my GH5 videos, and he just said, "Am I missing something? If you're serious about filmmaking, why not rent the new Red Weapon or any other professional camera," he puts professional in all caps, "for the same price as opposed to buying a DSLR? Seems to me only kids and wannabes buy these DSLRs for the purpose of filmmaking."
Well, you are a wannabe. I'll agree with that.
Yeah, I guess that's what I took offense with, is the idea that like only kids and wannabes are using DSLRs.
Yeah, I mean, I get his point. You know, you don't see, Mr. Peter Jackson running around with the GH5. Although, actually, that's probably not true. You see these GH cameras as B-roll cameras all the time, like in dangerous situations where they don't want to, risk their red weapons or what have you. I did just quickly jump onto Red's website. Do you know how much the weapon, the brain only, no lens mount, no lens, just the brain costs?
I mean, I assumed it was way more expensive. I assumed it was like at least $5,000 or $6,000 for the brain.
It's a $50,000 brain.
Oh, it's a $50,000. So he must be talking about. He's talking about. I must have been thinking about a different Red. He's talking about rental prices, I guess.
He specifically says rental versus buying. So I did check out lensrentals.com. Not an ad. That's where I went.
That's where I've actually rented stuff from.
As I said, well, I know that's where I would rent too. As I said that, I realized it feels like an ad. It's not. To rent the Red Weapon Helium 8K brain is $2,500 for a week. So the same price as the whole camera to buy.
So his point is, why buy a DSLR for $2,000 when you can rent for a week a professional camera, quote unquote?
And I'm sure there are certain types of projects where that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you are shooting your feature film that you've been working on for 2 years and you're shooting it in a week, that probably does make sense, right?
Yeah. But my response to him was roughly, because it doesn't matter. Like, audiences don't care enough about, and it's not. I'm not saying that I'm shooting on like a really low quality camera and I'm putting out low quality work. I just think that there's a law of diminishing returns where a $2,000 camera will do 90% of what a $100,000 camera will do. And if you need that little extra bit of quality, or if there's some particular feature that the expensive camera can do that the less expensive camera can't do, then sure, for your project, maybe you need to rent that or buy that. But I think for the vast majority of projects and for people, you can get by with a $2,000 camera, and audiences won't notice.
And I'm going to go a little bit farther and say it depends on the type of filmmaking you're doing. Your work, I think if all you had available to you was a Red camera, would suffer for it. Not because it's not a great camera, but because you can't shoot the way you shoot on a Red camera, right? You can't run and gun and do all the things that you do that make what you do interesting and unique on a Red. You just couldn't do it.
Yeah, I mean, every camera has what makes it easy to use or better for a particular situation.
Exactly. And there's not just one type of filmmaking that is, the end-all be-all. I think what you're doing is just as valid, and, there's a different set of trade-offs that are important to you.
And the second half of my answer to Tim was just that I think we get too caught up on cameras and we forget that filmmaking is not about cameras at all. It's about storytelling. And if you have a good story with a pretty good camera, you'll be fine. I mean, having a great
like
camera
that,
and no
Griffin.
story.
Panasonic's going to stop sending you a camera every week,
So I want to talk about storytelling today because that's what I think is really important here. But real quick, I want to first I want to tell a quick story about why I don't think like you need the perfect camera to reach audiences. And it's that one time I wanted to show Back to the Future to my friends in my apartment. In fact, you might have been there. I can't remember.
This doesn't sound familiar, but let's see where
this might have been after you graduated. But I was in grad school, and I was able to borrow a projector from the school, Illinois State University. And this was an old projector, so it needed like a coax input. So just to get the Back to the Future DVD onto the projector, I had to like run the DVD player through a VCR into the projector. The consequence of this...
Beautiful.
Yeah, exactly. The consequence of this is that I think the DVD player was introducing some sort of copy protection because it's like it knew it was plugged into.
So like faded in and out, like it got brighter and darker and brighter.
Exactly,
and darker.
That's what happened. Yeah. It was like every 10 seconds it would ramp up the brightness and come back down, and it wasn't like a smooth, like stopless exposure, like stopless aperture. It was like stepping up and stepping down. It was like bup 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 bup, and then like 10 seconds later, same thing. Over and over and over again, changing the exposure up and down. And it was driving me insane, but I didn't say anything. And we get through the 90-minute movie or however long Back to the Future is. And I told all my friends, I was like, man, I'm so sorry it was doing that thing the whole time with the brightness. And everyone, there were like 5 people watching the movie. No one noticed.
And that's how we know I was not in the room.
Yeah, exactly. But that was a valuable lesson for me as a filmmaker, because it was that moment that I learned that it's only because I'm a professional and I practice and I'm staring at video all the time can I see things like a single frame of black in 24 frames of video. Audiences don't see this stuff. They want to suspend disbelief and get wrapped up in the story, and they do not notice this pixel peeper stuff. The little minutia about how cameras, how good a camera is or not.
Sure. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
So that's why I want to talk about storytelling today.
Tell me a story, Griffin. Tell me a story, and I will sit back and relax and let you take the wheel.
Well, one of the things that kind of weirds me out about talking about this, about the structure of storytelling, is that it feels strange to say that there is a science behind this, that there's like a formula to good storytelling.
No, this is art only. It comes, it just flows through you, right?
I mean, what do you think? Is it okay saying that there's a formula to storytelling, or are we trying to avoid formula when we're telling stories?
Well, I think it's one of the situations where you have to know the rules in order to break them, right?
Yeah. And I do think that there's like a structure to storytelling that's built into our human DNA, that we as humans have evolved. We've survived, and the people that have survived through natural selection are the ones that are still around. And I think that a lot of our survival is based on storytelling, that we hear stories about survival from other humans, and we need to hear those, like that dramatic narrative and learn from it. And so I think there is some reason that there's a science, that there's a formula to storytelling.
You think we're hardwired to respond
exactly
to a certain type of story that helps us learn, where the tiger is over the ridge.
Yeah, how to avoid that saber-toothed tiger. Yeah, it's definitely hardwired into our DNA.
Okay.
So if you go to film school, you learn about storytelling, and you probably learn about Joseph Campbell. Have you ever heard of Joseph Campbell?
I have not. I did not go to film school.
So he was writing back in like the first part of the 1900s, and he's responsible for this idea of the hero's journey. It's also called the monomyth.
Sure.
And it's just like he kind of lays out what the structure of storytelling is. And he actually describes it in just a couple sentences as this. It seems way too complicated to me. A hero ventures forth from the world of common day into a region of supernatural wonder. Fabulous forces are there encountered, and a decisive victory is won. The hero comes back from this mysterious adventure with the power to bestow boons on his fellow man.
Perfect.
I mean, that sounds like a story, right?
I guess so, yeah. I mean, especially maybe some older movies and shows and things like that.
But it does seem like a little bit complex for me to parse out for like the kind of stuff I'm doing. Do I really have boons on his fellow man and decisive victories and supernatural wonder and all that. So the thing that's always kind of confused me about Joseph Campbell is that he lays out 17 parts to a story, and that's just...
That's a lot of parts.
I don't know if I have 17 parts. I mean, it's the things like Belly of the Whale and things. You've probably heard that phrase. The call to adventure, refusal of the call, supernatural aid, crossing the threshold, all these things. I really like a much simpler version, which I think you've heard me talk about before.
Is this Mr. Harmon?
This is Dan Harmon, yeah. So Dan Harmon is the showrunner of Community.
Mm-hmm.
He also does the show Rick and Morty.
Does he? Actually didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's a show I've never watched. Perhaps I should.
But you've watched Community?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You should watch Rick and Morty. It's a great show. Rick and Morty and Justin Roiland.
It's a cartoon, and I'm a grown man.
You have kids. You watch cartoons.
Well, and I've always assumed it's not appropriate for them. Is that true?
No,
or
it's not. It's not appropriate for your kids.
Okay.
But if you watch Community episodes, if you watch Rick and Morty episodes, you'll see a familiar structure to his episodes. And Dan Harmon explains this online, his story structure. He calls it the story circle. And he literally just draws a circle on the board with 2 lines through it, a vertical line and a horizontal line. So you've split this thing into 4 quadrants, but really if you consider each quadrant and each line a separate part, then there's 8 parts laid out in this little chart. Mm-hmm. And so he simplifies Joseph Campbell's model from 17 parts down to 8 parts. And these 8 parts are not complex phrases. They're just a single word. So it's easy to remember the 8 parts. So if you can imagine, we're going around this circle clockwise. It's you, need, go, search, find, take, return, change. Is that 8 things?
I'm already lost. I need a visual. You're going to throw a little graphic on the screen at this point, right? Help us out, since we're such a YouTube-focused podcast.
Yes.
Sorry, audio listeners.
So, 8 parts. You, the first one, is a protagonist. You establish a protagonist. Need, this protagonist has a will or want, something they want to accomplish. Go, they decide to start on a journey. Search is they're looking for that thing. They're heading towards the climax of the film. This is where a montage would be. This is where there are increasingly difficult challenges. Find, they get to what they're looking for. And then Dan Harmon's story circle has take, which is this very unique. I mean, he really like goes in heavy on the take. The take is the idea that you get what you're looking for, but you pay a heavy price for it.
Okay.
So, like...
I'm kind of trying to apply this so in theater, hey, I can bring my theater degree in.
Yeah.
We talk about, like, the dramatic arc.
Yeah,
and everything you
same
set
thing.
up until that point sounds very similar. You know, you got exposition and rising action, then you reach the climax. And I guess now we're talking about what we would say falling action, or, you know, after the climax as things... You know, you see the price you pay, I guess.
Take is like right at the... I guess right after the climax.
Yep.
And you know, I think of like romantic comedies where there's so many of them where like the guy bets his friends that he can get the ugliest girl to the prom or something. You know, it's like some stupid thing like this. And but you know, they fall in love, and then at the climax of the film, she finds out that there was this deceit. That's like the take. Like
that's the take. Him paying his price.
Exactly. They both got what they wanted, but now it's all twisted. And he has to pay. And then the last 2 phases are return and change. That the character is back, often physically back to where they started in the film, geographically. They're home. They've gone home, but they've changed as a character through this journey. So those are kind of the 8 pieces. And then,
what is the fact that it's a circle because they end up in the same place they started? Is that why it's a circle? Not that you go through the circle more than once in any given
right. A character will probably only go around the circle once, and it is nice that you literally end up back where you started, because that's where a lot of storytelling happens. And also, the kind of top half of the circle is like the stasis, the everything's normal side. And when they cross the threshold into this journey, that's the bottom half of the circle. Everything takes place at the bottom.
Yep.
So I mean, like, you might think, oh, I don't want to tell like a formulaic story, but if you think about almost every movie you watch, they follow this formula. Like, I often think of Jurassic Park.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good.
And you have, like, Dr. Ian Grant. You establish him early in the film. He wants to have a more intimate relationship with dinosaurs.
So let me just stop you right there. Does what you're saying right now indicate to you that you think the protagonist of Jurassic Park is Dr. Grant?
I think you can apply this circle to many characters. They can all have their own arc. But
okay,
yeah,
so
I guess
it doesn't have to be the protagonist or the star. Each character kind of goes through their own arc.
Yeah, I think in a way, Ellie Sattler and Ian Grant kind of collectively are the protagonists.
Okay.
Because we start with them.
Yep.
And they have similar will or want. In fact, we probably kind of follow them through the arc together. They both decide to go on this journey with Dr. Hammond to Jurassic Park. They are searching. They're literally searching for dinosaurs. Like, they do not see dinosaurs. And ultimately, they find dinosaurs. At first, it's what is it, Triceratops?
It's Brachiosaurus, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess they find a bunch. I'm thinking of, like, the sick Triceratops.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant when they first see dinosaurs.
Yeah. Well, and ultimately, the big, like, find is the Tyrannosaurus Rex. But, of course, that's a big take. That when they finally find, when they fully find all the dinosaurs in this park, they pay the consequence. And they literally return home on a helicopter having been severely changed. They do not believe that Jurassic Park is a good idea anymore.
So how do you apply this to non-narrative work?
Like, you mean like a documentary?
I do.
Yeah. So one of the best ways that I apply the story circle to documentary, one of the simplest ways and most effective, is in the way that you craft questions. Because I think if you literally only asked people 8 questions, but you asked them these 8 questions, like a you question, tell me about yourself, a need question, what is it that you want out of life, and how did you decide to go on this journey, and what kinds of challenges did you face along the way, and did you maybe in a documentary I'm not going to have a heavy take. Maybe it's not so likely they paid a heavy price for finding what they wanted, but there may be some of those sacrifices.
But there's a cost, and any decision you make has a cost, and that's kind of what you're trying to explore, right?
Yeah. And so, I mean, I think if you literally just asked 8 questions that hit those 8 kind of segments, you would have done a pretty good job of capturing a dramatic story about a particular person.
Interesting. Okay, very cool.
And this plays into a question that we got, an email that we got from Jeff, and he said that he just finished his first short film, and he's planning on diving into the editing, and he's wondering, how do you even manage all this footage? Should I edit in order from start to finish, or maybe start editing some of the more complex scenes and slowly build on those? And at least the way that I do it in documentary, maybe different for narrative, is I don't even necessarily know when I go into the editing what order everything will be in, but if I kind of structure it in this 8-part way, I can at least throw things into these 8 categories, and that gets me a lot of the way there.
Sure. And you almost find your story as you're diving into the footage and starting to put things together.
Yeah. I mean, depending on if David Tran in Sriracha says something about Vietnam, and I realize, that's part of his search, his traveling to the U.S. and building a business. Later, when I hear someone else talking about Vietnam, maybe for them I wouldn't have known where to put it. But now that I know, David's the protagonist and we're really going to follow his arc, I could put it in that section.
What was the take in Sriracha?
I don't know if there was a take so much. This is where it does fall apart a little bit for me, because not every story I'm telling is perfectly dramatic.
Sure.
and fully dramatic. But I try to use this as a guide.
Okay, that makes sense.
Although I did get a question when I was recently doing a presentation at Illinois State University. I got a question about, I think someone disagreed with me that David Tran was the protagonist, and they asked if there were other ways that I could apply this circle. Of course I wanted him to be the primary protagonist, and I tried to avoid, at first I tried to avoid having myself be in the film entirely. At first when I made the film, I just had my voiceover in there as like a placeholder. I was like, I'll get someone better to do the voiceover. And as I was making it, a lot of my friends and my wife were watching it and saying, you went on this really cool journey. You went to Thailand, and why are you trying to hide the fact that you're a part of this? But I always just felt like it was such a trope, like Michael Moore is in his films, or like Morgan Spurlock. I just hate the hey, I'm the director, and I'm going to take you on this journey. So I tried to do that, but not do it too heavy-handedly. But the more I thought about that story circle, I realized David Tran has a story circle, I have a story circle, the audience has a story circle. And I started to think about the audience as a character, and they're going to change in the film. They're going to learn a lot. Because I kind of struggle with that. If I'm making a film that's very informative, it's almost at the expense of drama sometimes. But I almost felt like if the audience is gaining something, they're finding out information and changing as a result when they go home. That's still a story.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's when you first started talking about it in documentary or non-narrative filmmaking, I didn't consider that, but it makes a ton of sense.
Well, and if you look at, you could Google pictures from Dan Harmon when he's working on the show Community. He actually will just have a whiteboard just covered in these circles, because they may have one for Jeff, they may have one for Abed. Every character may have their own story circle, and maybe even within a scene, he'll break it down into 8 parts.
Oh wow,
yeah. So he gets pretty crazy with it.
I love it. It's just something to give you a guide and a way to frame what you're thinking about and what you want to do next. I think is certainly helpful. And it's probably, as I do, I'm editing a wedding video right now, which I haven't done in a while, and sometimes I feel like I'm lacking inspiration, and this could give me something to just kind of think about as I decide how to structure a highlight film or something like that.
Yeah. You spend the beginning establishing who these characters are, and then, make it clear how important their will or want is, and that it wasn't easy getting to where they are today. But there probably won't be much of a take in a wedding video. They're not going to pay heavy
unless it's
price.
A really fun wedding.
So I'll put some links in the show notes at Hey.film to Dan Harmon. He writes a lot about the story circle, and you can read more about how to apply it.
Awesome.
So in just a moment, we're answering your questions about camera backpacks, color temperature, and collaborative editing. Okay, I just really quick want to go through some things that are coming up on my schedule.
Okay.
If people want to meet me out in the world. I'm doing a bunch of workshops.
I'm just looking at the notes. It looks like you're a busy man here in May and June.
Yeah, so even starting this weekend, I've talked about these, the workshop I'm doing at Samy's Camera on Saturday, May 20th. And then the next day, May 21st, in Riverside, California, I'm doing another workshop at Image One Camera and Video.
Where's the Saturday, May 20th one located?
That's going to be on Hollywood Boulevard. It's
in LA.
In Los Angeles, yeah.
Okay, awesome.
So links to both those events are in the show notes at Hey.film. And then immediately from LA, I'm not sticking around. I'm going to Asia. I'm actually going to be in 6 countries.
Wow.
So if you happen to be in Jakarta, Indonesia on May 24th, or Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia on May 26th, or Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam on May 28th, or I'll be in Singapore on May 29th and 30th. I'll be in Manila, Philippines on June 1st, and Bangkok, Thailand on June 2nd, doing workshops in all of those cities.
Oh my.
I don't even have links for those events yet, so if you're going to be there, if you are there, just email me at Griffin@Hey.film, and I'll tell you more about it.
Check out the Twitter. It'll be on there, I'm sure.
And then after
you
that,
sleep for a week.
No, even then, I'm coming back to LA, and I'm going to go to a film festival where they're playing Hand Cut.
Hey, good.
So on June 5th,
for you.
I'll be in Los Angeles, and then I do get to sleep for a week, but then I'll be in Almaty, Kazakhstan from June 16th to 18th.
You get a week off and then back halfway across the world.
Yeah.
Fantastic. You are a busy man.
Yeah, very busy.
What does your wife think of all this?
She'll miss me. I'll miss her.
Well, we got some questions, Griffin.
Yeah, let's get to them.
Bojack on YouTube asks, Griffin, you do all these talks and master classes and whatnot. You always seem to have a pretty full room. Have you ever gone to a talk and had nobody show?
Ooh. Well, hopefully people show up to the LA ones.
Awkward.
But I think for like workshops and talks, I've usually had pretty good turnouts. But I've definitely done film festival Q&As where maybe there were only 5 people in the audience.
Hopefully they are really engaged, though.
Yeah.
And does that bother you? Do you feel bad about that, or you just know that's just how things work sometimes?
Yeah, no, it doesn't bother me. I think I do have this feeling like, it's kind of a cliche, but like, you know, if you feel like you've reached one person, then it's all been worth it. And it's because I get, we get these kind of questions and emails from our listeners that I can see how just telling your story, just on a one-on-one basis, you're reaching people. So I guess I try not to take for granted the impact that a small group can have. I mean, in fact, maybe I'm going to have a bigger impact on those people because they were the only ones there.
Love it.
A tweet. This is a tweet I actually got from 2 people this week. One was from Jacob Holiday and one was from Dan Abbott. And they were both wondering what my favorite backpacks are for video gear. And I have 2 that I use primarily. One is a little bit bigger. It's the Think Tank Perception Pro, and it fits like 2 cameras, bunch of lenses, audio recorder. It fits a lot of stuff. But it's pretty big, and I don't always want a giant backpack. So my other backpack that I travel with is the Low Pro Photo Hatchback 16L size, which is nice and compact, but it can fit a fair amount of stuff, and just a little bit better for like running around town.
And I love my Peak Design everyday backpack,
yeah.
So that's another one to check out. They have it in 20 liters and 30 liters, so.
Yeah, that one's kind of like a middle between those 2 I just mentioned, size-wise.
And it's very fashionable.
It is very.
So beautiful like me.
I saw one in New York the other day, and I always think of Nick whenever I see a Peak Design bag.
And they also have other bags, too. So
yeah, I think they're getting popular.
They are. They're they're definitely pricey, but I've been very impressed with mine. We got a YouTube comment from I'm Not Crazy Studios. Maybe you are.
And this one is similar to the first question I brought up today.
Yeah, except, with less, meanness to it. Why would one buy a micro 4/3 camera over a full frame camera for filmmaking? Doesn't a larger sensor equal capturing greater quality video, like a Sony A7 versus the GH5?
I think that... you hear this a lot when people are talking about what cameras to buy and why full frame is better than crop sensor. But I think that the difference between full frame and crop sensor is a little bit overblown. I think you can compensate for that difference. A bigger sensor will capture more light and it will capture shallower depth of field. But the difference isn't that dramatic. And I think you get a more dramatic difference from putting a different lens on your camera or from lighting differently. I think those things have a lot more influence on the final effect of the shot than the size of the sensor.
Totally agree. And again, it's about trade-offs, right? You get a full frame camera, needs bigger lenses, more distance from the lens to the sensor, and there's just a different set of trade-offs.
Yeah. So I think, if your goal is like, if you are trying to build like the perfect low light camera, then yeah, maybe you need to go with the Sony A7. But I also think just putting a fast lens on your Panasonic is going to accomplish most of that.
Sure. Hey, and if you've got an A7 or a GH5, you're in really good shape. I mean, either one is a fantastic camera. Let's not, you just picked 2 of the best video cameras in the DSLR style you can get out there. So either one would make me happy.
And I actually just had my friend Carrie visited me here in New York, and she's a professional photographer, and I was trying to learn a few photography tips from her, but also she left her Canon 5D at home, and she wanted to take some photos, so I lent her the GH5. She was actually using a lens that I hadn't used. Panasonic gave me this 25mm lens. It's a f1.4, which nice. I guess is pretty much like the nifty 50 on the Canon.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So she loves that because she's a portrait shooter. So she picked up the 25, and I was actually surprised. I was amazed. I mean, she's a good photographer, but I thought this lens was like a little bit cheaper I haven't even played with it. It's actually not that cheap of a lens, $600 lens. But
yeah, you're a little spoiled. We know.
Well, I've gotten kind of spoiled by these like nice Leica metal lenses that Panasonic has given me, and this is like a plastic body, so I just assumed it was like a cheaper, less lower quality lens, but it's actually beautiful. And she came away after a week of shooting with this, or a few days of shooting with this, and I asked her, did you notice that you were shooting with a smaller sensor? And she didn't. She's shooting with a nice fast lens, and she was pretty happy with the small size of the camera.
It's awesome.
So what do we have next?
We got a Facebook
comment. Oh. We actually have a YouTube comment from Elite Lens Films.
I was gonna skip it on accident. Good thing you're here.
You have a thing against Elite Lens Films.
Yeah.
He's talking about something that we talked about last week, that I played a clip where I was telling students at Illinois State University that I didn't want to go down the traditional Hollywood route of being a normal director, screenwriter. And he wants to just know, like, what did I mean by that? Did he mean that I didn't see myself making narrative films on the big screen, or like that I always wanted to be indie, not Hollywood?
Well, let me answer that, because I know everything about you. No, I want you to answer. I was being funny.
I bet you could answer for me. I mean, I think I think I have a lot of ignorance about what Hollywood jobs are, but I guess I just assume that big movies, they're it's like a company for every movie. There's hundreds of people or thousands of people working on these things. And I guess I just don't see myself working in a giant production like that and being a small piece of it. I like to have a lot of ownership over the final product.
Yeah, my guess is if you had an idea and a project that you were passionate about and you were directing, and somebody threw $100 million at you and said, go make it and we'll give you a crew, you wouldn't have a problem with that. But I don't think you have any desire to work your way up from the bottom as a grip to try and get there.
Yeah, I don't want to start at the bottom, but also I do think I might have a problem with a huge budget and a lot of people, because I'm not confident in my ability to manage a thing that big. Well,
I don't want you to turn it down, because you're going to put me on the payroll. You're going to give me a sweet job where I don't have to do much and get paid a lot of money.
Like Fire Festival? No. You haven't heard of this Fire Festival debacle where these guys tried to run a music festival in the Bahamas and it just completely fell apart?
I think I saw headlines about this, but I ignored it because I didn't care.
This is the picture I have in my head of if someone handed me $100 million and was like, go make a movie, it's not going to work out.
Well, usually they come with producers who make you do things the right way, but anywho.
So yeah, I guess that's what I mean. I'm not a Hollywood guy.
We got a Facebook message from David. Hey Griffin, massive fan. Question I wanted to ask for the show. How do you and Nick feel about changing from making film for clients to how people make money for making content on YouTube? Filmmaking to content creating. And then he wants to know why both you and I have not become the next Casey Neistat.
Because Casey Neistat is just cooler than us.
I was going to say, who says we haven't? I mean, I think we're kind of a big deal.
Are you getting like 5 million views on all of your videos?
Well, close. Pretty close. So what do you think? You kind of do both.
Yeah, and actually, I mean, I think it's a little bit of a fallacy to think that like the people are making the switch from making videos for clients to making all their money on YouTube, because it's not easy to make money on YouTube. It's not like you just make a few viral videos and you're rolling in the money. So
you have to make like at least 6 viral videos.
Yeah. I mean, primarily still most of my business is client videos. It's jobs I take. The income I'm making on YouTube is not significant at all. It's not supporting this career. I like to think that I'm getting a benefit from making these podcast episodes in other ways, that, by reaching this audience, there's a value to having an audience and sharing what I learn. And, when I need to promote something, there are people that know about it. That's great. But the ad revenue on YouTube is not why I'm doing it.
Yep. Oh, I forgot he did also add at the end that we're both legends, by the way.
Yeah. Now, if I was Casey Neistat,
so I like David.
If we were Casey Neistat making 5 million views on every video every week, then yeah, we would be making enough money to like that's our career. But it's still just a piece of the pie.
So what do we got to do to get this podcast episode to 5 million views?
Not gonna happen.
Damn it. All right.
So I have my gear list on a website called Kit. If you just go to griffinhammond.com/gear, you can see all the stuff that I use. Mm-hmm. And I actually got a question on my kit from a guy named Chris Rice. And he was looking at the ice light, this like lightsaber looking thing that I use sometimes.
Yep.
And he was just wondering if the light that it gives off has a bluish tint or if it's a natural daylight look when on the subject.
Yeah.
And it is daylight balanced. It's like...
But that's blue if you're indoors.
Exactly, yeah. Compared to incandescent light, that is blue. It's 5,300 Kelvin. So in practice, I actually am often putting an amber gel on it because I want it to look indoor light.
Is it bastard amber?
Is that a thing? Is that a theater thing?
It's like your standard amber gel. That's what it's called.
Yeah.
I thought you knew that.
Well, and there are different. I may even be wrong about which gel I'm using because there's amber like for the effect of it, like the artistic. It may be like very amber, but then there's also I think what's called CTO. Is that? It's like for correcting it down from daylight to incandescent. But yeah, just make sure you're using the right gel, but you can definitely convert a daylight colored light into something that matches your incandescent bulbs, or vice versa. Put a CTB gel, a blue gel on your light, on your incandescent light to make it look more like daylight.
Very good. We've got a Facebook message from Steve. He's saying he's backing up all his video to external hard drives. I love backups. Good job, Steve. But if there's two of us, I think he means two editors, suddenly they need a solution that allows Final Cut Pro 10 libraries or projects to be shared. Do you have any recommendation for systems for collaboration for small video teams? Griffin, we just collaborated on a video, didn't we?
We did this last week.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that as I looked at something else, but we did. What did we do, Griffin?
So Nick offered to help, like rough cut last week's episode, and we were trying to figure out how to make this work. So I shared the entire library file with you over. Mm-hmm. We're using that Resilio Sync software, which is what we were already using to have Nick send me video files. But in this case, he was able to send me his video files through Resilio Sync, and I was able to send him the library file. And the library file in Final Cut is like a single file that holds all the video files, it holds the project files, and it's in one...
Self-contained,
Yeah, self-contained.
What we call a bundle. It's a bundle, yeah.
Now, one of the challenges with that, though, was that the podcast projects that I've been... I actually have one library for the podcast, but it has different projects and events for every single episode that we've done.
Yep.
And maybe I didn't need to send you an entire library that has, we're on 18 episodes now with, 17 episodes in this library. That was probably more than we needed to do.
There's probably an easy way to pull a project out of a library, but we didn't need to mess with that.
In fact,
there is. You can move projects between. You could have created a new library.
I should have created a new library that was like the portable one, yeah.
But you keep all your media external from the project, so it wasn't a big deal. I just couldn't see any of the media files for the other episodes. But I kept everything for this episode internal to the project, so you could quickly sync it back and pull it up. Now, the only thing we had to be careful of, I think, if we both tried to open the library at the same time, we were going to run into issues. So we just had to make sure Griffin was done and had it closed before I opened it. I could work on it for the week while you were off in Barcelona, get it ready for you, and get it to a point where it's good, close it out, it's synced back to your laptop or to your iMac. I'm assuming when you got home, you just opened the library and everything was there. Is that how it worked?
Well, I think I made you a copy of the library because I don't think you were editing. I would have been scared about like replacing the existing library.
But if you had opened just that library that I had been working on, it should have just been there, right?
Yeah, that's what I did. But I think I renamed it too because I thought I don't want the software to get confused and it's not gonna be able to open both at the same time. But one thing I wonder, you must have had to relink files, right? Because the files that the library was referencing would not have been in the same place on your hard drive as they were on my hard drive.
Yep. As soon as I opened the project, it said I can't find these files because I have a whole different directory structure than you do.
Yeah.
And I just had to point it towards the directory where all the assets were, and it found everything within 2 clicks. I didn't have to like do each one individually. It was pretty good about that. So that was cool.
And luckily we have we were doing this in a situation where we both have good internet speed, so we were able to share a large library file. I think it was like 6 gigs or something, which had some, I think it had some render files in there. But one thing I've done in the past to really minimize the file size if I need to send it over the internet is Final Cut creates these backup of projects. And I guess, are they backup of libraries or just projects? I can't remember. But
I think it's libraries, but I could be wrong.
Yeah. And if you just take the backup file, it doesn't have any of the render files in it. And so it's just like a tiny file. And of course, you're going to have to relink everything and you're going to have to re-render everything if you've already rendered. But it's one way to get like the slimmest version of the project. And
in better for what this person is asking, in Final Cut 10.3 they actually added support for shared storage to Final Cut Pro 10.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning like the Synology NAS that I always talk about. That's shared storage where more than one person can access the same files. So I'll put in the show notes the link to the Apple article about how to use shared storage in 10.3. But it's pretty simple. You just you have your library on that shared folder, and you can both take a look at it. Now, you are going to want to be hardwired, not over Wi-Fi, just to get the right speeds and things like that. But
so we shouldn't do something where we're both connecting to your NAS and your NAS stores a library file.
No, you would be trying to stream all the files as you needed them over the WAN. That would be no good. So this is definitely for a local network where you're hardwired. With Ethernet. I mean, it might work over Wi-Fi, but I would want to be hardwired.
Yeah. But yeah, just sending library files back and forth, that worked for us. And that's what I did with Sriracha. I had an assistant editor, and we were in the same house, but we were sharing library files between 2 different computers. He could work on something while I was working on something else.
Sure. So what'd you think of having me edit an episode? How bad was it?
It wasn't bad. It was super helpful. Mostly just because shooting a 40-minute podcast episode means you have to watch all of it and, maybe a couple times over.
Yep.
And just the fact that you made edits where you did, and I knew that you had gone through it, and there wasn't any like crazy mistakes in the show, just gave me the peace of mind that I could just like go through the edits and clean them up and put the things in I want, and the rest of the show is good.
Now, I still don't understand when I go look at your timelines why there's stuff everywhere. It's like, it looks like there's 15 layers of stuff, and when I was done with mine, there was like 3. So you'll have to explain to me what we're doing differently when we edit. But
I don't know. I mean, there's your video clip, there's my video clip, and then there's a little graphic for the border between us. And then, then when I go and do crazy edits and audio and stuff, then it gets like 15 deep.
So did the version that I sent to you eventually look like that after you were all done? Because you do such detailed audio and video separate edits.
Let's see. Episode 17. No, it looks relatively simple. It only ever gets like 5 or 6 things deep, maybe.
And I think you had the audio broken out a little differently than I do for some reason, but
well, I guess I do a lot in Final Cut of the like double clicking the audio, which
I don't even really know what that does. It happens to me sometimes, and I'm like, why did that get bigger? And I don't like it.
So yeah, when you double click the audio part of a video clip, it kind of expands out the audio and video into like separate tracks. And what that lets you do is you can now change the edit points for the audio separate from the video. So you can create your J cuts and your L cuts. You can have audio cut at different times than the video. So I do tend to do a lot of that with clips next to each other. I'll be adjusting the audio edit points, and that does create all these like extra tracks.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably what was making it look complicated. But it's actually not that complicated.
No, it's not. I never knew about the double click thing. I don't know what I've done to do J cuts and L cuts. I can't even remember now. But
maybe you are disconnecting the audio entirely.
That's what I'm doing. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't necessarily need to.
Damn. Now I feel stupid.
Well,
because sometimes they get out of sync and you're like,
yeah.
Now I'm swearing. I apologize. We're going to beep a lot of that out.
Well, now that you're swearing, we should get out of here.
We should wrap it up.
Well, next week, I don't even know where I'll be when we record this. I'm going to be in Jakarta, maybe. So next time you hear from me, I'll be in Asia.
Good luck, my friend.
Yeah.
Enjoy.
Thank you.
Find some fancy sriracha.
I will. Oh, I should take sriracha with me this time. I didn't do that last time I went to Asia.
For sriracha, even. Big mistake. Big miss.
Well, it's good talking to you. I'll see you next week on my travels.
Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll talk to you later.
See ya. Bye.
Bye-bye. Griffin, do you all...
You can do it.